So start பண்ணலாமா சார்?
Start.
Today's topic is a very small topic. It will take around only 10 to 15 minutes. Metabolic alkalosis. Since I didn't prepare much, it's a continuation of previous class ABG part 2, metabolic alkalosis. So metabolic alkalosis, we can divide the metabolic alkalosis into two types. That is chloride responsive and chloride resistance. In chloride responsive, the main pathology is chloride depletion. Whereas in chloride resistant, the main pathology is hyperaldosteronism. In chloride responsive, there is a loss of chloride ions from the body, which leads to decrease in urine chloride. So because of this decreased urine chloride, in the distal nephron, there is a transporter, that is chloride bicarbonate exchanger, which will excrete the bicarbonate into the urine, and it will reabsorb the chloride from the urine. So whenever there is a chloride loss in the body, the urine chloride will also be low. So whenever the urine chloride is low, obviously there is nothing to reabsorb from the urine. So this transporter will not work. When it doesn't work, the bicarbonate is also not excreted in urine. Because of this, there will be increased in bicarbonate in the patient's serum. So the patient will have metabolic alkalosis. So before moving on to the details,
Satya, screen visible? எல்லாருக்கும் screen visible இருக்கா?
Just a minute, sir. சார் இப்போ விசிபிளா இருக்கா சார்? ஹலோ சார்,
சத்யா தெரியுதுடா, பாதி தெரியுதுடா, ஒரு மாதிரி கட்டான மாதிரி தெரியுது.
ஓகே ஓகே ஓகே.
நீ கீழே எழுதுனதெல்லாம் தெரியலடா.
Okay. So once again, let me repeat. In chloride responsive, the primary pathology is loss of chloride from the body. Because of this loss of chloride ions, the urinary excretion of chloride will also be low. So whenever the urinary excretion of chloride is low, in the distal nephron there will be chloride bicarbonate exchanger. So when this urine chloride is low, obviously there is nothing to reabsorb chloride from the urine. So because of this transporter will not work, and obviously there will be no bicarbonate excretion into the urine, and because of which the serum bicarbonate will increase and the patient will have metabolic alkalosis. So metabolic alkalosis, the primary issue is there is increase in serum bicarbonate, and as per book definition, when the serum bicarbonate is more than 30 millimoles per liter, it is called as metabolic alkalosis. Whenever the patient is having, as I told in previous class, we have to look at the carbon dioxide
first step, and the second step is third step is for compensation. So when we look at the step of compensation, the patient will be having respiratory compensation, which is fast, but it is not full compensation. So for every 1 millimoles of increase in bicarbonate, the carbon dioxide will increase by 0.7 millimeters of mercury. So actually we have to calculate the increase in carbon dioxide by this step, or otherwise there is one shortcut formula which is available, that is the expected carbon dioxide is given by 40 plus 0.7 into bicarbonate minus 24. That is obviously in this metabolic alkalosis, the bicarbonate will be increased. It is more than 30. The 0.7 is the compensation. and 40 is the normal value of carbon dioxide. Plus, after, when we derive at a value, we can add plus or minus 7. But this formula is not accurate in all of the cases. Actually, we have to calculate compensation by this method only. For every 1 millimoles of increase in bicarbonate, there is increase in PaCO2 by 0.7 millimeters of mercury. So the second step is the second type is chloride resistant, where the patient will be having increased aldosterone, and we are going to see how this aldosterone contributes to metabolic alkalosis. So this is what the flowchart I prepared for metabolic alkalosis. There are two types. One is chloride responsive, and other type is chloride resistant. In chloride responsive, it is also called as saline responsive. So whenever there is a chloride depletion in the body, there will be loss of chloride, which leads to decrease in urinary chloride. And because of this, the chloride bicarbonate exchanger will not work. It is otherwise called as Pendrin transporter. Because of this, there is an increase in bicarbonate and there will be metabolic alkalosis. So there only major causes of chloride depletion metabolic alkalosis is only 4. One is vomiting. The second one is nasogastric suction. Third one is villus adenoma and some congenital diarrheas. Fourth one is chronic hypercapnia. So we are going to see how in each one of these contributes to metabolic alkalosis. In vomiting, it's very easy. We all know that in vomiting there will be loss of HCl, that is acid from the stomach. So there is a loss of chloride ions also. At the same time, there is loss of H plus ions also, which will contribute to metabolic alkalosis. So in vomiting, as I said earlier, the primary mechanism is by this chloride depletion. Because of this loss of chloride ions, the urinary chloride is low, and because of this transporter will not work, and there will be metabolic alkalosis. The second mechanism is whenever there is much of loss of chloride, there will be volume contraction. So because of this volume contraction, there will be activation of renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. Not only in this condition, whenever there is a volume contraction, there will be activation of RAS, and because of this RAS, aldosterone will be secreted, and this aldosterone will start reabsorbing the sodium from the through the ENaC channels, and it will also start excretion of these H plus ions. Because of these H plus ions, the patient will be excretion of H plus ions in the urine. The patient will be having metabolic alkalosis. So the metabolic alkalosis, the primary process is by this inhibition of this chloride bicarbonate exchanger. These in late stages of vomiting, the mechanism is volume contraction and activation of renin, angiotensin, aldosterone mechanism. So that's why this chloride depletion alkalosis is otherwise called as contraction alkalosis. So this is here where is the mechanism. In late stages, there will be loss of sodium, because of which there will be volume contraction and activation of renin, angiotensin, aldosterone, and it will once again excrete the H plus in urine, and there will be as the aldosterone will cause hypokalemia, there will be loss of potassium in urine also, which will cause hypokalemia, and because of this, there is increase in urinary hydrogen ions. So whenever the body is having alkalosis, that is excess of bicarbonate, the normal physiology, what we expect is the bicarbonate should be excreted in urine as a compensatory mechanism. But here what is happening is, controversially, the H plus is getting secreted because of this RAS system. That's why this process is also called as paradoxical aciduria. That is, instead of bicarbonate secreted in urine, the acid should be conserved, but instead of being conserved, it is secreted in urine, and it is called as paradoxical aciduria. The second cause of chloride depletion alkalosis is nasogastric suctioning. the mechanism is same, loss of H plus and Cl minus ions in the vomitus. The third important cause is villous adenoma. So the villous adenoma and other congenital diarrheas or congenital chloride depleting diarrheas are there, which in which there will be the loss of chloride ions in stools, especially in this villous adenoma. That is why the patient will be having severe metabolic alkalosis. And another interesting cause of metabolic alkalosis is post hypercapnia. So what is this post hypercapnia is whenever the patient is having this chronic hypercapnia because of some obstructive airway pathology, the patient will be having chronic hypercapnia. So please remember that in sudden respiratory acidosis, there will be no decompensation by the kidneys because it is an acute event. Whenever there is a chronic respiratory acidosis, at that time the kidneys will conserve more bicarbonate and it will compensate, and that compensation which occurs though late, it is a full compensation. So when the patient is having this chronic hypercapnia, as a compensatory mechanism, the kidneys will conserve the bicarbonate. There will be increase in serum bicarbonate, that is compensatory metabolic alkalosis. So by some interventions, by giving either medications or when the patient is on ventilator, we suddenly change the settings and we suddenly bring the carbon dioxide to normal level. But when we bring this carbon dioxide to normal level, the kidneys are slow. They cannot adapt very fast. So still the patient will be having increased serum bicarbonate only. So when we take an ABG, the pH may come to normal, the PCO2 may come as normal, but the bicarbonate still will be more than 30 millimeters of mercury, and we will be diagnosing it as metabolic alkalosis. So actually it's actually a compensating mechanism. It was not a primary metabolic alkalosis. So that is why there is a term called post hypercapnia. That is, after this correction of chronic hypercapnia, we will be having metabolic alkalosis. And next important causes cystic fibrosis. We all know that there will be loss of chloride ions in the sweat. And last important causes loop and thiazide diuretics, which will we all know that inhibition of 1 sodium potassium 2 chloride transporter and NaCl transporter in the distal nephron. So here are the causes of chloride depletion metabolic alkalosis, which I told. One is vomiting, nasogastric suction, congenital chloride diarrhea, and villous adenoma, and ileostomy, where there will be once again chloride loss in the stools, administration of thiazides and other Lasix diuretics, Bartter and Gitelman syndrome. Bartter and Gitelman syndrome, it can come in that chloride resistant metabolic alkalosis also. And here is the cause of recovery from chronic hypercapnia, cystic fibrosis, hypokalemia, severe potassium deficiency. Actually, this metabolic alkalosis and hypokalemia are like the twins. When one is present, obviously other may also be present many of the times. Like the metabolic alkalosis will cause hypokalemia, or the hypokalemia many times will cause metabolic alkalosis. That is, whenever there is a hypokalemia, there will be inhibition of H plus K plus ATPase pump. So because of that, the H plus secretion there will be activation of H plus K plus ATPase present in the distal nephron, and it will be activated. So because of that activation, that is the normal action of this H plus K plus ATPase is reabsorption of potassium and the excretion of hydrogen. So when there is hypokalemia, there will be activation of this H plus K plus ATPase. Because of this activation, the more of acid is excreted in urine, so the patient will go for metabolic alkalosis and the potassium will be conserved. So that is why in severe potassium deficiency also, the patient will have metabolic alkalosis. So the other, moving on to the other side of metabolic alkalosis, that is chloride resistant metabolic alkalosis. It is also called as saline resistant metabolic alkalosis. Here the pathology is increase in aldosterone. So whenever there is an increased aldosterone, it will stimulate the sodium reabsorption from the collecting duct, and this because of the sodium reabsorption, it will also promote the acid excretion as well as the potassium excretion in the urine, so that the patient will, because of acid excretion, the patient will have metabolic alkalosis and hypokalemia also. So we can classify the patients as normotensive and hypertensive. Whenever the patient is hypertensive, there is hyperaldosteronism. We should suspect this hyperaldosteronism, and this hyperaldosteronism can be primary hyperaldosteronism or secondary hyperaldosteronism. Primary hyperaldosteronism can be caused by this adenomas or tumors from the adrenals, and there are certain conditions which will be having this aldosterone-like action. That is this Liddle syndrome, licorice, and exogenous mineralocorticoids. So here is the mechanism of action. There will be stimulation of epithelial sodium channels by the aldosterone, and because of this, more sodium will be reabsorbed. As a result, with more sodium contraction, the aldosterone is a direct stimulator of this H plus ATPase and inhibitor of H plus K plus ATPase pump, because of which more of potassium is excreted in urine, and this H plus ions is also excreted in urine. The patient will be having increased urine potassium and urine hydrogen ions. So here are the causes for chloride resistant metabolic alkalosis. As I told before, primary hyperaldosteronism caused by adenoma and hyperplasia, and other secondary hyperaldosteronism causing conditions like Cushing syndrome, cortisol secreting tumors, and renin secreting tumors. And this steroid treatment many times may cause this metabolic alkalosis. Actually, past week in IMCU, we had one patient, 13 years old female. She is a known case of Addison's disease, and she was prescribed with this fluorocortisone, oral fluorocortisone. She presented with quadriparesis, and the cause of quadriparesis is severe hypokalemia. Her potassium was just 1.3, I think, and it is because of this metabolic alkalosis and severe hypokalemia is because of this fluorocortisone treatment. We stopped the drug, and potassium, once the potassium levels get corrected, the patient after the potassium value came to 3.5, patient recovered. And once again, this fluorocortisone was stopped, and other steroids was started and tapered. And apparent mineralocorticoid expressed like licorice injection and Liddle syndrome. In Liddle syndrome, there will be the aldosterone levels will be normal, but still there will be activation of this ENaC channels, epithelial sodium channels, and this licorice and 11 beta hydroxy this 11 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase is an enzyme which converts this cortisol to cortisone. So when this enzyme is deficient, the cortisol will not be converted to cortisone, and this cortisol will be having some mineralocorticoid activity, and because of this some mineralocorticoid activity, the patient will be having metabolic alkalosis and hypokalemia. So this licorice and 11 beta hydroxysteroid deficiency has same mechanism. This Liddle syndrome is through direct stimulation of these ENaC channels. And once again, if the patient is normotensive, the patient we have to think of the conditions which cause severe hypokalemia. That is, we can this chloride resistant metabolic alkalosis we can divide it into two types: hypertensive and normotensive. In this normotensive cases, we should think of the conditions which causes severe hypokalemia. So we know what are the causes of severe hypokalemia, like this aggressive diuretic therapy, and the two syndromes which cause this diuretic like effects, like that is Bartter syndrome and Gitelman syndrome. So whenever there is a severe hypokalemia, there will be loss of whenever there is a loss of potassium in the urine, there will be there is a concept actually this one mechanism which I previously told earlier, the hypokalemia causing this activation of H plus K plus ATPase pump, and there will be excretion of acid in the urine, by which the patient may develop metabolic alkalosis. The other mechanism, which is very important also, that is because of this potassium depletion, especially the loss of potassium, the conditions which cause loss of potassium in urine, that is like loop diuretics, thiazide diuretics, Bartter syndrome, and Gitelman syndrome. In those cases, in the distal nephron, there will be a presence of intracellular acidosis. That is, the cells will have more of protons. Because of this, there will be activation of ammonia production. I already told in previous class, whenever there is an acidosis, ammonia comes into play. Because of this increased ammonia production, and this ammonia production will trap this H plus ions, and once again it will excrete this ammonia H plus ions in urine as ammonium ions. And because of this loss of H plus, the patient will be having alkalosis. So it is also a very important mechanism by which way the patient may develop, patient with the severe hypokalemia may develop alkalosis. So the loop diuretics and thiazide diuretics, actually this loop and thiazide diuretics in the initial, that is short use, in the initial stages, it will cause this metabolic alkalosis by contraction, volume, that is chloride depletion and volume contraction. But in late stages, it will cause the activation of aldosterone, and because of this hyperaldosteronism, it will cause loss of metabolic alkalosis. The same way, Gitelman syndrome and Bartter syndrome. Bartter syndrome is similar to loop diuretics, and Gitelman syndrome is similar to thiazide diuretics. And in this Gitelman syndrome, the patient will be having magnesium deficiency also, which is very difficult to treat. Like, we'll be treating this potassium alone, but when we check this magnesium levels, the patient will be having severe hypomagnesemia. And the treatment of both the same, to be precise, it is very simple, that whenever there is a chloride depletion, we have to give NaCl infusions. These NaCl infusions will improve the metabolic alkalosis, whereas here the primary pathology is hyperaldosteronism. We have to give aldosterone blockers, that is spironolactone and eplerenone. And especially in this Liddle syndrome, where there is excessive activation of this ENaC channels, this spironolactone and eplerenone will not be effective, where we have to give amiloride, which is a ENaC channel blocker, amiloride and triamterene. So these drugs will be useful in patients having this Liddle syndrome. And yet another third important cause which we encounter also, that is iatrogenic cause of the cause of metabolic alkalosis, iatrogenic. That is, we administer many alkali in our routine drugs that may cause metabolic alkalosis. The major lists are given here. The ringer lactate, that is lactate present in ringer oral, may cause this. That's why whenever a patient comes with vomiting, we will be infusing with NaCl infusions. Whenever a patient coming with diarrhea, will be treating with oral infusions. So we avoid this oral in patient coming with vomiting. And also the soda bicarbonate infusions what we give, that may also cause this metabolic alkalosis. And parenteral TPN, parenteral nutrition solutions, will contain this acetate glutamate and propionate, which will cause alkalosis. And also blood products, massive blood transfusion, to chelate this calcium ions, our blood in our blood products, we will be using this citrate as a chelating agent. And because of this citrate that is present, it will cause metabolic alkalosis. That is why the most common acid-base disorder in massive transfusion is metabolic alkalosis. And also the calcium and binding resins and phosphate binding resins, what we give, may also cause this metabolic alkalosis. So here are some facts, that is, or some clinical clues. That is, whenever a patient is having hypertension and adequate chloride intake, but and also who is not on any diuretic agents, the most common cause of metabolic alkalosis is primary hyperaldosteronism. That is, a patient should be hypertensive, he should not on any diuretics, and he should be having adequate chloride intake. And in a patient with similarly, if a patient is normotensive or hypotensive and he is not on any diuretic agent and he is not on any diuretics, if he has, if he, and that is point number 1 is normotensive, point number 2 is not on the diuretic agent, and point number 3 is patient is having adequate chloride intake. The most common cause is Bartter, that is the syndrome. What we should suspect is Bartter syndrome and Gitelman syndrome. So here are the treatment. Chloride depletion, we have to give intravenous NaCl infusions, and because for this potassium loss, we have to give this KCl infusions also. And in this persistent alkalosis, the proton pump inhibitors, especially in this vomiting, and in some surgical cases which needs continuous nasogastric suction, the patient may develop alkalosis, but still if the surgeon wants this nasogastric suction to be continued, at that time we can give this proton pump inhibitors. They will inhibit this proton production, that is H plus production in the stomach, so that the alkalosis will get reduced. And the metabolic alkalosis and hypokalemia, which is seen as Bartter and Gitelman syndrome, is most difficult to manage. So in addition to oral supplements, the magnesium supplements also is needed in Gitelman syndrome. In chloride resistant metabolic alkalosis, the mainstay of treatment is aldosterone blockers, phenolphthalein, epinephrine, and for this licorice injection and Liddle syndrome, we have to give this amiloride. And surgery, like in adenomas, hyperplasias, surgery may be required. So that's all about this metabolic alkalosis. We will continue about respiratory acidosis alkalosis, and also some certain points on AA gradient, and all these things needed to be discussed. Since there is no time, I cannot prepare slides within this short time. So we'll see it in a separate test. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very good presentation, da.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
So since just read it in the last minute, just we'll just go through the just basic 8 steps of analyzing ABG, the one which you previously thought. Okay.
இப்போ திரும்ப டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணுவோம் சார்.
சும்மா ஷார்ட்டா 8 ஸ்டெப் மட்டும் சொல்லிடுறேன்.
ஓகே சார். ஓகே சார். ஓகே சார். So this is a stepwise approach to an ABG. Whenever we want an ABG, we should obtain this ABG and serum electrolytes simultaneously. This is because to verify the validity of our ABG machine. This is because in our ABG machine only this pH and PaCO2 are only PO2. Only these things are measured by the machine. Other things are calculated and given by the machine. So we should check whether the machine is calculating appropriately or not. That is why we to check the validity of the machine, we are having this equation called modified Anderson equation. That is bicarbonate is equal to 24 into PaCO2 divided by H plus ions. This bicarbonate and the bicarbonate what we calculate and the bicarbonate given by the ABG machine, we should compare. If we compare both two, the difference should not be more than 2. If it is not more than 2, then the ABG is valid. So in this example, we can see that PaCO2 is 25. So if we calculate 24 into 25, that is 600. Divided by this H plus is 50. So 600 divided by 50 is 12. And the ABG's missions report is 11. So this ABG is considered as valid.
சத்யா ஒரு செகண்ட் டவுட்.
சொல்லுங்க.
ஹலோ, அந்த H பிளஸ் வேல்யூ எங்க இருந்து கிடைக்கும்?
H plus வேல்யூ ABG மிஷின்ல இருந்தே தான் வரும். pH ல சம் மிஷின்ஸ் வந்து வரும்.
நம்ம மிஷின்ல வருதா H plus வேல்யூ? நம்ம
மிஷின்ல வரதே இல்ல. ஆனியன் கேப்லாம் வந்து ஆனியன் கேப்பே வரது இல்ல நம்ம மிஷின்ல.
ஓகே.
ஏதோ ரொம்ப ரேரா தான் நம்ம கேட்டா தான் கொடுக்குறாங்க. சில மிஷின்லாம் பேஸ் எக்ஸஸ் லாக்டேட்
வரும். பேஸ் எக்ஸஸ் யூசுவலா வரும். அந்த இந்த மிஷின்ல வரும்.
லாக்டேட் கொடுக்கும் சில மிஷின் பிளஸ் H plus ions கொடுக்கும். அது மாதிரி நிறைய வரும்.
சத்யா ஆக்சுவலி நீ சொல்ற மாதிரி ஐடியாலாம் பண்ணணும். அப்படி இல்லைன்னா நீ சொன்னதை வேற விதமா பண்றதுக்கு ஒரு ஐடியா இருக்கு. இப்போ நீ முன்னாடி ஸ்லைடுக்கு போ, நான் சொல்றேன்.
சொல்லுங்க சார்.
இந்த ஃபார்முலா இருக்குல்ல, நீ வந்து ஆக்சுவலி இது எப்படி கால்குலேட் பண்ணோம் அப்படின்னா H பிளஸ் அந்த பக்கம் கொண்டு வரணும். H பிளஸ் இஸ் ஈக்குவல் டு 24 into PaCO2 by HCO3. சரியா? இப்போ ஐடியலி பைக்கார் மெஷர் பண்ணோம். பைக்கார் மெஷர் பண்ண முடியாது நம்ம கிட்ட, அது பார்த்து இப்போதைக்கு அதெல்லாம் நடக்கிற காரியம் இல்லை. சரியா? இது ஆக்சுவலி இப்படிதான் ஃபார்முலா பார்க்கணும். இதை வச்சு எப்படி நீ கால்குலேட் பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்னா, ஒரே நிமிஷம் நீ ஸ்கிரீன் ஷேரிங் ஒரு நிமிஷம் நீ ஸ்கிரீன் ஷேரிங் ஆஃப் பண்ண.
ஓகே சார்.
என் ஸ்கிரீன் தெரியுதா அப்போ?
தெரியுது சார்.
இந்த ஃபார்முலா இருக்கு பத்தியா, இதுதான் ஏடிஎஸ் கைட்லைன்ஸ். சரியா? ஏடிஎஸ்ல இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷன் ஆஃப் ஏபிஜில இதுதான் ஸ்டெப் 1. சரியா? இந்த ஃபார்முலா நீ போட்ட H பிளஸ் ஈக்குவல் 24 இது போட்டனா H பிளஸோட வேல்யூ வரும் உனக்கு.
ஓகே சார்.
இது வருது பத்தியா, இதுல ஒரு வேல்யூ வரும் H பிளஸ். இந்த வேல்யூக்கு இந்த வேல்யூ இந்த பிஎஸ் ஏபிஜில இருக்கணும்.
ஓகே சார்.
இதுதான் சிம்பிளஸ்ட் ஃபார்ம். இது ஆக்சுவலி விஆர் சார் இதை மனப்பாடம் தான் பண்ண சொல்றாரு. இதை மனப்பாடம் தான் பண்ண முடியாது. இதை உட்காந்து நீ இந்த இதுல கரெக்டா உனக்கு லாக் புக் மாதிரி இந்த H பிளஸ் வந்தா இந்த பிஎஸ் வரணும். அப்படி இருந்தா உன் ஏபிஜி கரெக்ட், இல்லைன்னா உன் ஏபிஜி மிஷின் தப்பு. ஏபிஜி கேலிபிரேஷன் சரியில்லைன்னு அர்த்தம். இந்த மாதிரி நிறைய தடவை நம்ம பயோகெமிலே நடந்திருக்கு. நானே இப்போ நிறைய தடவை சொல்லி ஏபிஜி மிஷின் எஸ்பெஷலி நிறைய தடவை பயங்கரமா எக்கச்சக்க ஏபிஜி ரன் பண்ணும்போது கேலிபிரேஷன் தப்பாகும். அடிக்கடி ஏபிஜி கேலிபிரேஷன் பண்ணிட்டே இருக்கணும். ஸோ இந்த ஃபார்முலாவை நீங்க போட்டுட்டு இதுக்கேற்ற H பிளஸுக்கு இந்த பிஹெச் வருதான்னு பார்க்கணும். அப்படின்னா தான் ஏபிஜி கரெக்ட். ஸோ இதுதான் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஸ்டெப். ஓகேவா? இப்போ நீ அடுத்து அப்புறம் கண்டினியூ.
So there are certain basic rules which you are going to see in an ABG. The arrows should move in the same direction for a simple disorders. If the arrows move in an opposite direction, then it is a mixed disorder. And for regarding the compensation, for metabolic disorder, the patient will be having a respiratory compensation. The lungs are so fast, so the compensation also will be fast, but the compensation is never complete. The pH will never come to normal. For a respiratory disorder, the compensation is by the kidneys, that is metabolic compensation. So the kidneys are always slow. They usually take 24 to 48 hours to compensate. For an acute respiratory disorder, there will be no compensation at all. For a chronic respiratory disorder, the patient will be having a full compensation and an effective compensation. So the step 1, we have to look for the arrows. So in this ABG, first always look at the PCO2 and bicarbonate, and we have to draw arrows whether it is increasing or decreasing. Here the PCO2 is decreasing, at the same time bicarbonate is also decreasing. So it is a simple disorder. So this is our first step. Here in this example, the PCO2 is increasing, but the bicarbonate is decreasing. So it is a mixed disorder. So first step is to identify whether it is a simple disorder or mixed disorder. Our step 2 is to look at pH, and we have to correlate to find out out of which one is a primary disorder and which one is a compensation. So in this, once again, back to the same example. Here the PCO2 is decreasing and bicarbonate is also decreasing. That is our first step, simple disorder. And the pH is also decreasing, which indicates acidosis. This PCO2 does not correlate with pH because decrease in PO2 should be alkalosis. But this bicarbonate decrease is acidosis. So the bicarbonate is going on with pH. So this decrease in bicarbonate is a primary disorder, which is metabolic acidosis. And because of this, the patient is having respiratory compensation, that is respiratory alkalosis also. So the third step is we have to go for a compensation. So for compensation, I told 4 numbers to remember. That is 1.2, 1.2, 0.7, 0.1, 0.4, 0.2, 0.5. So with this, we can easily remember this compensation. For metabolic acidosis, for every 1 millimoles of decrease in bicarbonate, the PCO2 will decrease by 1.2 millimeters of mercury. For metabolic alkalosis, for every 1 millimoles of increase in bicarbonate, the PCO2 will rise by 0.7 millimeters of mercury. Whenever we come to respiratory component, there are two things, acute and chronic. Similarly, for respiratory alkalosis, there is acute as well as chronic. So for every 1 millimeters of mercury decrease, for every 1 millimeters of mercury increase in PaCO2, the bicarbonate will increase by 0.1 millimoles per liter. Same way, for respiratory acidosis, which is chronic, for every 1 millimeters of mercury increase in PCO2, the bicarbonate will increase by 0.4 millimoles per liter. For respiratory alkalosis, there will be carbon dioxide washout. So for every 1 millimeters of mercury decrease in PaCO2, the bicarbonate will decrease by 0.2 millimoles per liter. For respiratory alkalosis, which is chronic, for every 1 millimeters of mercury decrease in PCO2, the bicarbonate will decrease by 0.5 millimoles per liter. So these are the compensation. We can remember this by this short numbers: 1.2, 0.7, 0.1, 0.4, 0.2, 0.5. So this is an example for alkalosis. This is an example for calculation of compensation. Here the patient's bicarbonate is 9.6. And other, for metabolic acidosis, there is a short formula called Winter's formula: 1.5 into bicarbonate plus 8 plus or minus 2. So 1.5, and here the bicarbonate is 9.6. We can approximately take this 10 plus 8. So 15 plus 8, which comes under 23 plus or minus 2. So the value should be, that is expected PCO2 value should be 21 to 25. So here the patient is having 22.2. So it is a metabolic acidosis with compensation. So in this example, once again the bicarbonate is low and the PCO2 is also low. Simple disorder, pH is low, so it is a metabolic acidosis. For compensation, 1.5 into, here the bicarbonate is 10.6, we can take it as 11 plus 8, which will come under 16 plus 8 plus or minus 2. 24 plus or minus 2, it should be 22 to 26, but the PCO2 is 17.3. That is because the patient might have hyperventilated. That is, we can say it as a overcompensation or metabolic acidosis with respiratory alkalosis. So the fourth step is a measurement of anion gap. Anion gap is a measurement of unmeasured anions minus unmeasured cations. The concept comes from the basic concept, like cations and anions are always in equilibrium. That is, cations is equal to anions. And here the cations, which we take it as sodium plus unmeasured cations, which is equal to the anions are bicarbonate plus chloride minus unmeasured anions. Plus unmeasured anions. So rearranging this equation, unmeasured anions minus unmeasured cations, that is, this goes this side and this goes this side, we'll be getting unmeasured anions and unmeasured anions, which is equal to sodium minus bicarbonate plus chloride. So these unmeasured anions minus cations is the anion gap, which is equal to sodium minus chloride plus bicarbonate, and the normal value of this anion gap is less than 2. This is because why this, which comes around 12 is there is because of unmeasured organic anions, like many proteins that are present which are not measured regularly, and because of this the normal anion gap value is less than 12. So there are two whenever we diagnose this metabolic acidosis, we can divide it into two: normal anion gap metabolic acidosis and the high anion gap metabolic acidosis. The causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis is simple mnemonic by URATs. That is U for ureteric diversion, R for renal tubular acidosis, A for Addison's disease, and D for diarrhea. We are going to okay. For high anion gap metabolic acidosis, this is because of increased number of unmeasured anions. The mnemonic is gold mark. G for and there are many mnemonics like mud piles, mud pilers, like many mnemonics are there. But what I remember is gold mark. G for glycols, O for oxoproline, L for L-lactic acid, D for D-lactic acid, M for methanol, A for aspirin, that is salicylates, R for renal failure, that is CKD, And key for ketoacidosis can be diabetic ketoacidosis, alcohol, and starvation. So let us move with an example. Here the patient's bicarbonate is 10 point decreasing. At the same time, the PCO2 is also decreasing, so it is a simple disorder. pH is also decreasing. It is an acidosis, and it correlates with HCO3, so it is a metabolic acidosis. And we are going to calculate the anion gap with this sodium and chloride and bicarbonate. What we have, the sodium is 127 minus chloride is around 94 plus bicarbonate is 10.6, which we can take it as approximately 11. So it will come around 105, 127 minus 105, which should be 22. So here the anion gap is 22. So it is more than 12. So it is a high anion gap metabolic acidosis. After calculating this, whenever we come across normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, we should go with urine anion gap. Whenever we come with an ABG of anion gap metabolic acidosis, we should calculate the delta ratio. So delta ratio is delta anion gap divided by delta bicarbonate. That is difference of anion gap divided by difference of bicarbonate. So the normal anion gap value is 12, and what the machine gives is high anion gap. So Ag minus 12 divided by normal bicarbonate value is 24, divided by obviously in metabolic acidosis bicarbonate will be low, 24 minus HCO3. So this is the standard formula. And if this delta ratio, if the delta ratio normal value is 1 to 2, if the delta ratio value is less than 1, the patient is having high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus associated normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. If the delta ratio is more than 2, the patient will be having high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus metabolic alkalosis. So here once again we will see with an example, the same example for the bicarbonate and PCO2 both are decreasing, so it is a simple disorder. pH is also decreasing, which correlates, and it is a metabolic acidosis. The anion gap is 22, so it is a high anion gap metabolic acidosis. So once we come across an ABG like this with a high anion gap metabolic acidosis, we should calculate the anion gap. So the anion gap here, which is given, is 22 minus normal value is 12, divided by the bicarbonate value is 11. So 24 minus 11, which will come on around 10 by 13. So obviously when we the ratio, it will be less than 1. So this patient, actually the clinical history of this patient is severe diarrhea for past 4 to 5 days, and the patient presented with a sudden onset renal failure. So because of this renal failure, the patient is having a high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Since the patient had 4 to 5 days of diarrhea, the patient is having associated normal anion gap metabolic acidosis also. So whenever if a CKD patient develops loose stools consecutively for 2 to 3 days, and if we take ABG at the time, we can come across this this sort of delta ratio less than 1. Or if a CKD patient because of uremic gastritis or many other conditions they are there which may produce vomiting, and because of that vomiting, patient will be having metabolic alkalosis. So this renal failure will show a high anion gap metabolic acidosis. At the time, when we take this delta ratio, it will come around more than 2. So whenever we come across an ABG of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, we should calculate this urine anion gap. Urine anion gap is given by the formula urine anion gap is equal to sodium plus potassium minus chlorine. So this urine anion gap is always a positive value. If it comes as negative value, then there are these are 4 causes of normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. URATs, their diarrhea is one of the cause. Like whenever there is a GA cause, the patient will be having a negative value of urine anion gap, which I told in easy way to remember, like a negative will be having this gut. So this GAT causes the urine anion gap will be negative, and if it is positive, it will correlate with renal causes. So here is the flow chart for metabolic acidosis. Whenever the metabolic acidosis we come across an ABG, we should calculate the anion gap. If the anion gap comes as a high anion gap metabolic acidosis, that is in all cases of anion gap metabolic acidosis, we should calculate this delta delta ratio. This delta delta ratio, if it is a normal value is 1 to 2, if it is less than 1, patient is having associated normal and metabolic acidosis. If the delta delta ratio is more than 2, the patient is having associated metabolic alkalosis also. And if the patient, whenever we come across an normal anion gap, we should calculate this urine anion gap. If the urine anion gap comes as negative, then it is as GIT causes. If it is positive, then it is a renal cause. That is why the patient is having a negative value in this GI causes is. So whenever the patient is having loose stools, why in diarrhea the patient is having acidosis? That is, in the stools there will be loss of bicarbonate. So because of this loss of bicarbonate, the body will be that is, a patient will be having acidosis. So whenever there is an acidosis, in the physiology section, that whenever the acidosis is there, the alpha intercalated cells will be activated. In this alpha intercalated cells, there will be chloride bicarbonate exchanger. So the body tries to conserve more of bicarbonate. That is the chloride. Just a minute. So
There is a chloride bicarbonate exchanger which will conserve this bicarbonate and it will excrete the chloride in.
The patient is having a loss of this bicarbonate in the stools, and the patient will develop acidosis because of that, secondary to that. So as a mechanism, the kidneys will try to compensate, and this alpha intercalated cells, this chloride bicarbonate exchanger will be present, which will conserve more of bicarbonate from the urine. Body will try to conserve more of bicarbonate from the urine, and it will excrete more of chloride ions into the urine. So because of this, the urine chloride will get increased. When this urine chloride keeps on increasing, obviously the urine anion gap will become negative. So whenever there is a GI cause, the patient will be having negative urine anion gap. So once again, there are two important causes of anion gap metabolic which you all know, that is DKA as well as this renal failure, that is CKD. So whenever we come across a anion gap metabolic we
check for a CBG and
ketones, and if it is negative, then we should check the serum creatinine, which will be increased in renal failure, and the serum lactate we can check, which will be increased in lactic acidosis. If still all these things are negative, that is ketones are negative, creatinine and lactate are normal, then we can go for this step of toxicology screening, where we will calculate this osmolality gap. This osmolality gap all the cases. If still our
for iron gap metabolic acidosis still remains undiagnosed, we should go for this osmolality gap. We should actually send the patient's serum osmolality, and we should we should collect this value from the lab, and we should calculate the osmolality from on our own by using this formula: 2 into sodium plus blood urea nitrogen divided by 2.8 plus glucose divided by 18, and a difference of these two values, if it comes more than 10, we should take it as significant. This is because we are missing some osmoles. Because of this missing osmoles, the serum osmolality will still high, but we will not take this osmoles into consideration when we calculate osmolality. So this value will be low. So we will get a difference of more than 10. If it is more than 10, then the causes are ethylene glycol poisoning, ethylene glycol poisoning, propylene glycol poisoning, ethanol methanol poisoning, and if it is less than 10, it is seen in salicylate.
So this is how we proceed with approach to ABG, steps of approach to ABG. Thank you.
That was very good presentation.
Okay, sir.
பேசிக்லி இது வந்து நீ சிஆர்ஆர்ஐ கொடுக்குற இன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன், ஏபிஜி எடுக்கணும் அப்படின்னா என்னென்ன இன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன் சிஆர்ஆர்ஐ கொடுக்க போறீங்க?
சார் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் வந்து flush the syringe with heparin, sir. 2 cc syringe. It should be not more than 0.1 ml, sir, heparin, because heparin itself will produce some acidosis values, sir. So just flushing the syringe and needle with heparin is enough, rather than taking some amount of heparin.
Heparin is one of the strongest acids in your body.
Sir?
So it is. Adan, correct தான். Heparin is one of the strongest acids in your body. So you cannot take 0.1 ml of heparin in the syringe. So you just flush the syringe with heparin. That will do much more than enough. There is not necessarily that there has to be 0.1. You just flush the syringe and the chamber of the heparin and flush it off. That is enough. Okay.
Yes. And then air bubbles on the there should be no air bubbles, sir. And then ideal site was radial artery, and before taking APG we should palpate the ulnar artery also, whether it is present and it is competent. And while taking, the wrist should be in extended position. Saline bottle can be kept underneath to achieve this position, sir. And palpating the artery and 45-degree needle insert panni, bevel of the needle should face upwards, sir, so that easy to prick. And we should not suck more aggressively, sir. Suck பண்ணாம அதுவாவே தன்னால வரும் சர்க்குலேட், because of increased pressure in the artery. It will come on its own.
Yes, you are not supposed to put extra suction on the syringe. Because of the pressure on the artery, it is supposed to come up.
Yes, sir.
So நீ சொன்னதெல்லாம் கரெக்ட் தான். முக்கியமா 2C syringe சொல்லு. ஏன் syringe எடுக்க சொல்லணும்னா, it is basically the machine வந்து அதான் பண்ண முடியும். The machine is calibrated for a 2cc syringe. We give 5cc syringe the patient will, there will be problems in interpreting the machine interpretation values are தப்பா வரும். ஓகேவா?
Okay, sir.
So anyone nice presentation. So anyone else?
Satyanarayan.
Sir, சொல்லுங்க sir.
What is the role of VBG da?
Sir, in VBG, the bicarbonate, only the carbon dioxide PO2 and PCO2 levels will vary, sir. Otherwise, the other measured values like bicarbonate are same, sir. So still, it can be considered as a valid tool for in diagnosing this metabolic disorders, sir.
பைகார்ப் செக் பண்றது இல்லாம வேற ஏதாவது யூஸ் இருக்கா பிபிஜிக்கு?
சென்ட்ரல் லைன் போட்டுட்டதுக்கு அப்புறம் அதோட பேட்டர்ன்ஸ் செக் பண்றதுக்காக யூஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க சார்.
இல்ல தம்பி, இல்ல ஏபிஜி ஆசிட் பேஸ் பேலன்ஸ்ல கேக்குறேன்
சார். செப்சிஸ்ல வந்து அதான் சார், செப்சிஸ்ல வந்து வீனஸ் ஆக்சிஜன் சேச்சுரேஷன் தேவை சார்.
அதாவது இது கேள்விப்பட்டீங்களா, டிஷ்யூ டைப் அசிடோசிஸ் அப்படின்னு கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா?
இல்ல சார்.
ஓகே, என்னன்னா ஓகே நீ சொன்னது ஓகே தான். நம்ம வந்து அடிக்கடி ஏபிஜி போட்டு பைக்கார் பார்க்கறதா ஏபிஜி படிக்கணும் அப்படின்னு அவசியம் இல்லை. ஸோ விபிஜி மட்டுமே பார்த்து பைக்கார் பார்த்துக்கலாம், மேல் டிஃபரன்ஸ் இல்லை. அது ஒரு நல்ல பாயிண்ட் தான். ஏன்னோ அந்த பைகார்பனேட் பஃபர் சிஸ்டம் இருக்குல்ல, அது வந்து பார்த்தோன்னா முக்காசி உனக்கு வந்து ஸ்கெலிட்டல் மசில்ஸ் தான் இருக்கும். ஸோ அதனால நார்மலா வந்து ஏபிஜில வந்து பிசி ஓட்டு வந்து 40 இருக்கும், விபிஜில வந்து பிசி ஓட்டு வந்து 46 இருக்கும். தட்ஸ் நார்மல் வேல்யூ. ஸோ உனக்கு தெரியும் மெட்டபாலிசஸ்ல பைகார்ப் டிராப் ஆகும், ஸோ பிசி ஓட்டும் டிராப் ஆகும். ஸோ இங்க ஏபிஜில உனக்கு எவ்வளவு பிசி ஓட்டு டிராப் ஆகுதோ அதுக்கு கரஸ்பாண்டிங்கா உனக்கு வந்து விபிஜில டிராப் ஆகணும். பட் இஃப் த டிஃபரன்ஸ் பிட்வீன் த PCO2 in ABG and VBG is more than 10 அப்படின்னா you can know there is a poor buffering capacity of the skeletal muscle which can occur in shock like condition. ஷாக்ல உனக்கு skeletal muscle perfusion இல்லைன்னா உனக்கு பைகார்பனேட் ஒழுங்கா இருக்காது. ஸோ அந்த டைம்ல இந்த டிஃபரன்ஸ் வந்து more than 10 வருது அப்படின்னா the patients are at risk for developing CNS side effects of acidosis அப்படின்னா. ஓகே அவ்வளவுதான். அதே மாதிரி அந்த யூரினரி ஆனியன் கேப் அது சொல்லிட்டு இருந்தேன், பட் சடன்லி ஸ்டாப் பண்ணிட்டேன். அந்த நெகட்டிவ் ஏன் வந்துச்சுன்னு சொல்லுவீங்க, முடிச்சிட்டியா?
சார் அது திரும்ப ஒண்ணா சொல்றேன் சார். அது
நீ இது வரைக்கும் சொல்லிட்டு இருந்தேன் நான் கேட்டேன் அப்படின்னா ஓகே. பைகார்ப் கன்சிடர் பண்றதுக்காக கிட்னிஸ் will excrete more of chloride. ஓகே
சார்.
ஓகே, பட்
the formula urine chloride. யூரின் குளோரைட் இன்க்ரீஸ் ஆகும்போது இந்த ஃபார்முலால இந்த சைடு இன்க்ரீஸ் ஆயிடும் சார். I mean, urine anion gap is equal to sodium plus urine sodium, urine potassium minus urine chloride, sir. So
ஓகே
on the minus of urine chloride, on the side increase ஆகுறதுனால, so chloride increase ஆக value வந்து urine anion gap negative தான் சார் வரும்.
ஓகே. இல்ல இப்ப தால ஒரு ஆனியன் வந்து எக்ஸ்கிரீட் ஆகுதுன்னா shouldn't there be some positive ion to maintain the neutrality?
அதான் சார், அந்த chloride is the other anion சார்.
இல்ல பாசிட்டிவ் கேட்டைன் என்னங்க ஆக்சுவலா?
கேட்டையான் வந்து அம்மோனியம் சார், அம்மோனியம் சார் அது.
Okay,
Actually urine anion gap is a measure of ammonia excretion தான் சார். Actually theoretically பேசும்போது it's a measure of urinary ammonia excretion தான் சார்.
super nice. Okay. Okay, you guys carry on. Okay. Cool. Raghu, you continue, da?
Anyone else? Anyone else wants?
முனிஷ் சார், சார் ஒரு டவுட் தான் சார். சார் நீங்க அந்த இது சொன்னீங்கல்ல, வீனஸ் PO2, ஆர்டீரியல் PO2,
PCO2 டா.
PCO2 ஓகே சார், ஓகே
PCO2.
சரி சார், ஓகே சார். அதே PO2லயும் பார்க்கலாம் சார்.
ஓகே.
So when arterial PO2 and venous PO2, if it is too narrow, it is indicator of impaired peripheral perfusion, sir.
அதே தான் skeletal muscle ஒரு blood supply போகல perfusion impaired அப்படினா
ஆமா சார். So
PO2 narrow ஆகும், PCO2 gap wide ஆகும் obviously.
Yes sir. அதேதான் சார். PO2 வந்து more than 80 இருக்கு, venous PO2 better peripheral vein தவிர peripheral vein விட central veinல பார்த்தா நல்லது. Central venous PO2 if it is high, it is indicator of poor perfusion.
Okay da.
Nice.
Anyone else? So, thank you Satya, thank you Munish. Then we'll sign off then.
Thank you.
Bye guys.